Hello and welcome to Marillion Monthly. This month we will be talking to the wonderful Mark Kelly.
So here we have my keyboard rig that I use. Actually, it's the same rig I use live on stage as when we're in the studio here. There's the RD2000, which is basically a piano style keyboard. Let's just get a sound up here. These are all basically what you would call a MIDI controller. So they don't actually make, if they're not connected to anything, they don't make any sound, as you can see. But the sounds will come from the computer, and it's what's known as virtual instruments. So, for example, good example would be the Minimoog, which is one of my old keyboards that I used to use way back. And then here is the virtual instrument version of it, which kind of looks identical visually, and kind of makes the same sort of sounds. So that's an example of how it's all gone from physical keyboards to complete digital computer-generated stuff, virtual instruments as they call them. So, back in the old days I'd have a whole bunch of keyboards, maybe 2 or 3 on each side. But now I can literally just change through different sounds just by pressing this pedal down here. See, I can go from piano to another sound. Yeah, so big sound for a chorus on Crow and the Nightingale. And then you've got a piano. Yeah, so for example, I don't know, let's take a song like El Dorado. Quite often I'll spend my time looking for sounds. When we're writing, I will, literally there's so many people making sound, libraries that you can pay for them, or you can download stuff, or you can create your own. And so one of my favorite instruments is a thing called Omnisphere, which is it's what you would, I suppose it's like a workstation, I think they would call it. It's got thousands of sounds, some which are provided with it, some from other people. And it's, it can be really inspirational if you get a really nice sound such as this. That was a sound from Omnisphere that as soon as I heard it, I started playing and came up with that part. And that's quite often how I write ideas for music. Just get inspired by the sounds. So a good example of my writing process would be a song like Crow and the Nightingale. Started off, there was a sound on an instrument called stray light. I mean, some of these instruments have weird sounds, weird names. And this instrument, it's let me get the sound up. So it literally is it makes the note, and then it plays a fifth afterwards. And I was like, well, that's not that useful. But then I thought, okay, well, maybe I can just incorporate it into the part, because I really like the sound. I had this kind of very basic idea, which was like a sort of. And that's really where I started with the music for Crow and the Nightingale from my point of view. Obviously the other members of the band will be adding their own things and doing their own things as well. But that was the starting point. And whilst I liked the sort of what that sound created sonically, it was very messy and not that usable. So when we got to Real World, there's a really nice piano there, and I thought, okay, maybe I can do something with that part and play it as a piano part with the fifths. Doing that, which was from the original sound, but if I just play it as a piano part, it would be like. And then when we got to playing it live, in the studio, I then added over the top of that, but of course I can't do all of that at the same time. There's 3 parts there. So I cheated a little bit, and by adding see, normally you would just play a bass note and it'd sound like that, but by adding what's called a chord trigger, you can basically add more than one note to each note that's played, so it sounds like a whole chord. And then that gives me the chance to sort of do the next part, which was so I'm playing that. So now I can do it all in my left hand and do the other part in my right hand. Sometimes when I'm doing stuff live, I'll be playing parts that I wouldn't play in the studio. Like for example, on Great Escape, Falling from the Moon, there's like a layered part. But then when Steve switches from his guitar part, which is kind of like he switches to the guitar solo, so then I then switch to playing his part and my part, and Pete does the left-hand part on the bass pedals, so it sounds and so on. So you get the idea how we can do these things live. And quite often there'll be stuff that Pete plays on his pedals, which will be keyboard parts, or samples that need triggering. Like there's a little sample at the end of Falling from the Moon when Steve's doing his various bits on the guitars, and it's actually a guitar sample that I trigger just at the very end.
Giving away all the secrets now.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's just, you know, in the studio we record all these parts, and then it's like, oh, how are we going to do this live? We don't have extra musicians on stage, so kind of a compromise. Sometimes we just leave the parts out. Occasionally we'll put them in the box, as we call it. I've got another computer here which has got all of our click tracks and some backing vocal parts and the odd power chords, or, you know, layers of stuff that you know, without it, I mean, the songs would probably sound fine, but adding them just gives an extra, you know, an extra bit of a boost here and there, or just something that might be missed in a live situation. You know, we play what we can, and that stuff is triggered. I mean, it all kind of started with, I think we really got into all that stuff with the Brave album, because it was such a densely recorded record with so many different parts that we all played. It was just impossible for us to do it without resorting to a bit of technical trickery. Quite a few people have been asking about the choir, because we use a choir on the album, especially on a song like Crowing the Nightingale, the choir Noir, and the intro of Be Hard on Yourself, there's a big choir, but it's actually me triggering some samples on a virtual instrument. If I get the sound up. So at the very beginning you've got the big intro with the big chords, and over the top there's a choir, and actually the choir, it's literally just this instrument. Let me find it. Where is it? Yeah, so it literally makes vowel sounds. It's not actually, the choir isn't actually singing anything. So it's like, it just goes like a round robin thing where it will play a different vowel sound every time you play a key. So together you get like a big, it's not actually any words at all, so in case you were wondering. For this it was more of an effect, and in fact when I recorded it, I was half expecting the band to throw it out because it was a little bit over the top bombastic, and I kind of, quite often I'll do stuff at home and I'll send it to Mike, and knowing that maybe 50% of the time it won't get used, just, you know, I'm just experimenting, trying stuff, and before I throw it in the bin I think I'll just send it to Mike, see what he thinks. And that was one that I really expected everybody to go, nah, we can't do that, it's just too over the top. and for some reason everybody liked it. So there you go. We have, for certain songs there might be, well, like a song like This Strange Engine, you've got clicks in some of it and not in parts of it as well, So when the guitar riff starts for the Ever Since I Was a Boy and I'm doing there's a click going through that, to keep us in time. And so then there's the solo. Yeah, that's one of my favourite bits is doing that solo. Like this, I'll just play a bit of the second half of it. So yeah, and then I get to the end of the solo, and then I step on the pedal, and the next patch is a big piano, and then in the next part, if I step on the pedal again, when I'm playing the piano, they add some strings, so you can hear the string playing there. And so on. So yeah, that gives you an idea of what I'm doing when I'm stomping on these pedals and changing keyboards and stuff. I've got 4 keyboards, and as you can see, quite often I'm just playing this one or these 2. But sometimes it really helps to have a physical place to go to rather than stepping on a pedal to change the sound, because sometimes you might want to just play a couple of lines here and then come back to this one again. So that's why it's really handy to have more than just 2 keyboards. I mean, I could split the sounds on the keyboard and have different sound at the top and the bottom, but then it makes it unnecessarily complicated when having the same keyboards. I suppose, apart from playing the keyboards, having to take care of all the extra click tracks and all the stuff that the other members of the band need, because we have three different clicks running at the same time. So there's a click for Ian, which we don't hear because we want to play to Ian when he's playing, but when he's not playing, we'll have a click for the band, so we've got something to play to, so we don't end up speeding up or slowing down or whatever. And then H doesn't like having any clicks, but occasionally it's necessary for him to have a click. So he'll have a click just now and again, and he'll have it very quiet, and so it doesn't get in the way of his performance, because it can be a little bit off-putting if you've got this dock, dock, dock going all the time. So yeah, I have to do all that prep, as well as getting all these different sounds. Any samples off the albums that we need for live, I've got to put in there as well. So there's quite a lot that could go wrong, I suppose, but it has got more reliable. It used to be a nightmare back in the 90s when we were kind of doing stuff that it was a bit before its time in the sense of the amount of stuff that we were trying to automate, I suppose. The computers were less reliable. Sampling wasn't very good. The amount of memory that you had to play with wasn't very useful. So there was a lot of difficulties. But I use this program on the Mac called MainStage, which is an Apple program, and it's really reliable. And in fact, when I'm on stage, this is like the edit layout. This is where you can see virtual versions of the keyboards, and I've even made this one look blue, like the blue keyboard over here, which is my Native Instruments 25th anniversary complete keyboard, which I don't know, I bought it on a whim thinking, oh, that's a nice thing, all blue keys, but under blue lights on a very dark stage, you can go, whoa! It can be a little bit of a tricky one, but you best to not look at it when you're playing it. But yeah, so in a live performance situation, I would have this set like that, so that you can see all the song titles here, well, the song titles and the parts of the songs. So I basically just give every part to a song a different name, so I can see where I'm supposed to be. Yeah, and there's a danger sometimes I'll step on the pedal in the wrong place and go forward to the next sound when I shouldn't be on that sound. So then I've got to go back. But that's part of the practicing as well, to learn where to do the patch changes and all that sort of thing. So yeah, that's pretty much the rig. I've got a little studio, which is basically a room that I've built in the garage, and I've got a similar setup. Well, actually, I've just got two keyboards rather than 4, but yeah, it's basically another RD like this and a keyboard like this, and I have a sort of duplicate of the rig in terms of what's happening with the computers and everything, and I synchronize the 2 computers using Dropbox, you know. So I can practice stuff at home, but to be honest, it's kind of, for practicing for the live stuff, I generally have to come in here just so it is actually this rig that I'm using, because there's, you know, there's a few things that I mean, I could get a complete duplicate set up at home, but it seemed a bit overkill when I can just come here. But when I'm working on writing, I quite often record stuff at home and send it to Mike, and then he can do what he wants with it, or send it back and say, can you change it? But yeah, most of what we do, practice-wise, I've got a piano in the house as well, which I tend to noodle around on, and I wouldn't say that, it's not like I'm practicing scales and stuff. I've kind of missed that boat, I think, on that. But I do play, and quite often if I come up with anything that sounds like an idea that could be developed, I'll record it. I've tried to stick to the original sounds as much as possible. You know, the old stuff as well, even though, you know, I don't know, songs like Incommunicado or Garden Party, that, you know, they use fairly old sounds, but as much as I can, I think people want to hear the songs sound like they sounded. So, you know, I'm fairly anal about trying to keep the original sounds as much as possible. I find it a bit disappointing when you go and see bands, and I don't know, if you're listening for the keyboard sounds and they sound nothing like the record, you're like, well, why, you know? But so, yeah, I suppose there's a temptation to update things and make them sound better, but better isn't necessarily, you know, changing them and making them, you know, more modern isn't necessarily better, in my opinion. You know, those old sounds like mellotrons and stuff, they have a certain quality and an atmosphere to them that you don't want to lose, really, you know.
So I found it really interesting what you were saying about using libraries of sound.
Yeah.
Do you ever create sounds yourself? Do you have a library that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I quite often change. So I don't usually start from scratch, because it's a lot of work to get to the point where you've got something that's listenable. So I usually start off with somebody else's, you know, sound, or a sound that's come with the instrument. You know, there's a lot of, like I was talking about Omnisphere. I'm just going to go to like this Omnisphere. There's a sound here. Bedouin harmonic groove, and that is one of the Moog tribute library sounds I was mentioning earlier, and that became the sound that I used at the beginning of Care. And it's like a sample looping.
I was going to say, for me,
and I mean,
it's a sample rather than a sound.
That's unusual for me to use a sample that's not really playable. You can only hold down a note, really, because if you try and play part, I mean, you can do it.
Let me do it. Oh, that was the wrong key.
Yeah.
Sorry, that one. Oh, wow.
So that's, you know, I don't use many sounds like that, but that can give you an atmosphere or something to work with, you know. This bit here, where these are different coloured layers to show you what sounds are layered up. You know, when I say about layering sounds, I have more than one sound.
And that's the stuff when you sit there and we say the band can't start rehearsing yet because Mark's at home programming.
That will be, yeah, so literally,
what you're doing,
I'll go from the album song, you know, the parts I played on the album, and then think, okay, how am I going to do this? So for the bit in The Strange Engine with Invisible Man.
Oh.
You know, so I've got an organ here and the choir here. But I'd have to map all that out. I have to decide what keyboard's going to have what sound, when it's going to happen, when I'm going to do the patch changes, because sometimes, you know, you want to have a sound ready on this keyboard while you're playing this one. And
is that why you have The 4
Yeah,
keyboards.
yeah, because I could do it with 2, but the problem would be then I'd have to have lots of different split points where I'd have some sounds here, some here, and it's just remembering where everything is would be a nightmare. So it's more intuitive to just think, oh, this sound's on this keyboard. Like the piano is always on this keyboard. Leads, synth sounds are always on this. We're usually on this keyboard. Organ usually on this keyboard. So I kind of try and keep some sort of order to it, so I kind of instinctively know where to reach for the particular sound that I'm going to play, because otherwise, I mean, it's possible, but it would take a lot more time for me to learn where all the splits are, what octave to play in, because if I've split this keyboard in half, then okay, so this upper half, it's not going to be really high notes up here. I mean, for example, even on that Crow and the Nightingale song, I kind of, not cheated, but I split the keyboard so that, so I'm doing this part, but that's in the way of me playing because it's in the same place. So I did this, I copied these notes to here, same note, see? And that's an octave above.
Oh,
it
is a lot more complicated than I thought it was, Mark. I'm actually, well done.
So things like that, it's fine if you're not doing too much of that, but if you're doing lots of key splits and lots of stuff in different octaves, it's so easy to just reach the wrong place, to play it in the wrong octave or whatever.
So when you're jamming and you're all in the studio and you're playing around with stuff, and then you go and you leave and you come back, and a month later Mike Hunter says, oh, you all did this jam, and he plays it back to you. How do you remember what sound you were using? Have you got a diary or?
I'm laughing because this happened a lot where Mike's like, oh, this is really cool. And I'll go, yeah, I think I can get that sound. And I'll spend literally days looking for it because I haven't made a proper record of. So what I do now, I save a file. So if we're jamming, I'll date the file to the day. And if anything happens in the room when we're jamming and I think it's worth making a note, I will actually save that sound there and then and say, okay, I know this day I can find that sound again, because Mike at some point in 6 months' time is going to ask me, oh, we're going to work on this today, and what's that sound? Whether it's that sound from Care or whatever.
Yeah. So while you're jamming, are you literally clicking because I don't come in here and watch you all jam, because that would do my head in. Do you sit there and just click and go, oh, no?
No, I used to do that, but it drives everybody nuts because I'll get some, I'll just get some crazy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You got it, yeah. And if you look over, be like, what the hell's Mark doing? Yeah. So what I do now is I basically produce like a palette of sounds, and I'll have 4 different sounds, and then I have a step on the patch, and there'll be another 4 sounds, but they'll be ones I've pre-chosen, knowing that I'm going to like them and that they're going to be useful for me. So
you do homework before you come in. You're like, today I think I'm going to be trying out. They're called weird things, aren't they? You said they're called.
Yeah. Omnisphere or Diva. Diva's one that we use for Pete's bass pedals. So because Pete used to play these Taurus bass pedals, and they kind of sound a bit like this. You can't hear them because they're going out a different channel, but they kind of sound like this. So he plays them from his pedals, but the sound is actually coming from me, because the pedals are just MIDI pedals. They don't make a sound. It's just sending the notes to me to play.
And Pete plays them because you don't have enough hands.
No, he used to play the bass, so for that's his old bass pedal sound that he would normally use. But then sometimes, I'd get him to play bass notes on the piano or some samples or stuff that just don't have either the headspace or the hands to play it. That's the pass it on to Pete. If it's I go, what am I going to do with that? I know, I'll give it to Pete.
I think that's really interesting, Mark. Thank you for sharing this all with us, and as always, I'll ask the fans if they've got any other questions for you. Maybe they can write them in the comments below.
We've got some questions here, actually.
Oh, hang on, Tim's got some questions.
Okay, I'd have a MIDI controller, probably something like this RD2000, and the synth would be a virtual instrument called Omnisphere, the one that I mentioned earlier, because it's very versatile. It's got a lot of great sounds, and if I just could have only one, that would be it. Some of them. Well, I haven't really done anything on it, to be honest. The live thing, it's a bit tricky. I think if I'm going to do any live shows, it's going to have to be after another album, and when that will be, I'm not sure. So at the moment, no plans, but you never know. Rick Wakeman's solo in Close to the Edge, the organ solo is amazing. I love that. I'm trying to think. Keith Emerson, Carnival 9, synth, pretty amazing. Yeah, I don't really listen to many keyboard players solos these days, so it's not many are springing to mind, to be honest. How long you got? Read my book. Yeah, I think you know, they were fun times. I mean, I think most people would say, you know, whether it's your university years or your, you know, your early years of, you know, when you first started work or whatever, you tend to have a lot of memories and quite vivid memories as well. So yeah, I do have quite a lot of fond memories of my time with Chemical Alice and the early Marillion years.
Without plagiarising.
Yeah, that's not. I was going to say not on purpose. I mean, I suppose it could have happened, but not intentionally. Occasionally, we get. I suppose you hear something you like the sound of, and it'll kind of inspire you to do something not similar, but you know, it sort of sets you on a particular path. And I think that you can see that in some of our work through the years. What we've been listening to at that time, or members of the band might have been listening to, but there's nothing directly copied, shall we say. I'm still exploring the instruments that I was using on the last album, to be honest. I've got so many great sounds that I haven't used, and it's kind of down to when a great sound gets paired up with a interesting piece of music that then inspires H to sing on it and the rest of the band to work on it, that it can become something. So it's just a case of sometimes going back and trying sounds you've used before but never made it to the actual recording stage. So no, I'm always on the lookout for new instruments and new sounds, but nothing at the moment springs to mind. The Korg Karma was kind of showing its age. I'd already had that was the second one I'd had, and you know, it was hard to get hold of one that was in good condition because they stopped making them years ago. And I only use a small number of sounds from that instrument, to be honest, and it's mainly from the Marbles era. And I discovered a VST instrument, which I'm going to find now, which uses a lot of it's called the Triton, which is made by Korg, and it's up on my screen at the moment. And the sound, for example, the sound out of Neverland, which I used for a little tiny chord in Invisible Man. We're not hearing any of it now. Maybe it's that pedal. No, that's not it. Where is it? The volume's down. Okay. That sound was a Korg Karma sound, and Triton, which is also by Korg, basically can reproduce pretty much all the sounds that I had in the Karma. So I could then get rid of it and still have those sounds that are really important for those songs from Marbles. So that was and then this Keylab, the Arturia, it's got a really nice feel to the keyboard. It's very light, so it's good for solos, and obviously the RD is more of a piano keyboard, but I really like it, so that was a good opportunity to switch to a new keyboard. I started running again after about a year of not running at all, really. My daughter Tallulah's decided to run the Oxford Half Marathon in the autumn, and she asked me, "Oh, Dad, do you want to run it with me?" And I foolishly said yes. So I thought I'd better get in shape. I love the Mellotron. And again, you've got a great VST version. It's actually, technically, it's an audio unit, but yeah, similar to a VST, for anybody who knows what that is. So there's a thing called Sampletron, which is basically a Mellotron in a sampler. And let me just see if I can get a sound. So that's like a flute sound, and then you can get the string sounds. Let's see, a Mark II Mellotron that Tony Banks used to play with the Watch of the Skies sound. Oh, that's wrong. But anyway, you get the idea. So yeah, the Mellotron. I love the Mellotron. But it's kind of such a distinctive sounding instrument that you can only use it sparingly, I think. But I have used it quite a bit through the years on various songs. I tend not to have musical ideas ready to go. Occasionally I do, but it is really occasionally. I would come into the studio with something in my head to say, "Oh, I'm going to play this to the band and see what they think." But it's quite rare. I usually just turn up with nothing and just hope for the best and just start playing and see what comes out, using the sound as the inspiration, even if it's just a piano sound, So no, I don't have anything that I can think of. I've got a bunch of little recordings, but it's nothing. They're not like finished ideas that I would say were ready to go as songs. And as far as the overdubs in the studio, so you start off with a basic part, and then when you're recording, you think, okay, this chorus needs something extra, or this next second verse needs something to distinguish it from the first verse, or whatever. I just tend to just noodle around at home, trying different things, and then I send what I've done to Mike, and he usually throws most of it in the bin, and occasionally he keeps something. So it's a case of trial and error, really. That's a good question. There's been a few discussions over the years about not revisiting songs, but if we were to do it now, how we might do it differently. Like, for example, the Cannibal Surf Babe, the chorus of it goes down, and most choruses tend to go up, and it would be interesting to see how it would work if it was in a different key, the chorus, I mean. I don't know, there's a few songs that feel like they were almost great but didn't quite make it. A song like Built-in Bastard Radar, or just trying to, yeah, there's not, I think, we do our best to make the songs as good as we can when we're writing them. So there's not really much of a desire to revisit songs and rewrite them or try and improve them. Ooh, that's a tricky one. I've enjoyed them all up to a point. I think I enjoyed the last one a lot. I mean, it was fun, I felt like I had lots of freedom to try different things, musically and sound-wise. So, yeah, looking forward to the next one too. I think it's interesting that we've kind of not finally started to use other musicians, because we did have Phil Todd play on a couple of songs way back, but generally we haven't really had outside musicians come into the band and join us. So it adds a nice colour, and I certainly think in the case of Crone the Nightingale and Louis Jardim's percussion contributions really made a big difference to some of our songs. So I think it's certainly something we should do more of. Next question, please.
I didn't say anything.
Tudo bem. Thank you for that. Obrigado, muito.